Hi, everyone, and welcome to our brand new show, Unbearable. I'm your host, Anna.
And I'm Mike. Yeah, we're really excited to be here. On Unbearable, what we aim to do is take a look at a bunch of different news stories
Right.
and really pull out the most interesting, the most important things for you to know.
Kind of like getting you up to speed without all the reading.
Exactly. Saves you the time.
So, for this very first installment of Unbearable, we've got a pretty broad mix of topics we're going to cover. We'll start with some happy news, which is always nice.
Definitely.
Then we'll move into, well, what's happening in government, take a look at social media, check out entertainment.
Fashion too, right?
Yep, fashion. And finally, we'll wrap things up talking about AI and tech.
And to make it a bit more interesting, after we chat about each story, we're both going to give it a rating.
Oh, yeah, the ratings.
Unbearable if it feels like, bad news or just something frustrating. Neutral if we're kind of like, either way.
Or bearable if it's actually good news, something positive.
Exactly. So, are you ready to jump into our first story? It's in the happy news category.
Absolutely. Let's hear it.
Okay, so this first one comes out of Nashville. There's quite a movement building. Over 50,000 fans, apparently.
50,000? Wow.
Yeah, who are pushing to rename Nashville International Airport B&A in honor of, well, Dolly Parton.
Oh, I love that already. What got this started?
Well, it sounds like it really gathered momentum after there was some talk about maybe naming the airport after President Trump.
Okay.
That got people thinking, and these two fans, Lydia Popovich and Dan Dion, really started pushing online. Their whole point was like, why not honor someone who really is the heart of Tennessee?
That makes perfect sense. And what was their main case for her? Beyond just being Dolly,
They made a really strong argument, actually. They talked about how she's not just this huge music icon spreading love and goodwill.
Which she absolutely is.
Totally. But also how incredibly generous she is. Her philanthropy is just massive.
Can you give some examples? I know she does a lot, but what specifically?
Well, the big one is her Imagination Library. Started back in '95.
Right.
It's now given away over 100 million books to kids. Just think about that number.
That's staggering. Really?
It really is. And more recently, like in 2023, she gave $1 million for coronavirus research at Vanderbilt.
Oh, wow.
And just last year, another $1 million for Hurricane Helene victims. She just keeps giving back.
Yeah, those are serious contributions. Definitely puts her in a different league.
It does. And, the timing's a bit poignant too. Her husband, Carl Dean, passed away recently after nearly 60 years together.
Oh, that's right. So sad.
Yeah, their whole story. It apparently even inspired one of her big songs. He was like her rock.
But renaming a whole airport, that's a big deal, isn't it? Logistically.
Oh, absolutely. It's not simple. The article mentioned it'll need backing from key figures, like state legislator Rep. Todd Warner and the airport CEO, Douglas Croylan.
So it needs official support.
Definitely. But the fans are hoping, with 50,000 plus people behind it, it's hard to ignore.
I think so. It sends such a great message, too. Okay, so rating time. What's your call? Bearable, neutral, or bearable?
Oh, this is easy. Bearable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just
yeah.
a positive, feel-good thing, honoring someone truly deserving you.
Completely agree. Bearable for me, too. It'd be wonderful. All right, let's move on to our next topic. Politics. I think I'm leading this one.
Yep, sounds right. Go for it.
Okay, so this story is about a meeting between El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, and President Trump. They apparently met at the White House.
Yeah, I saw something about that. What was the main focus?
Well, one really interesting point was President Bukele telling President Trump he would not send back a man who was mistakenly deported from the U.S. to El Salvador.
Mistakenly deported. How does that happen?
It sounds complex. This guy, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, apparently entered the U.S. without authorization, and he was supposed to be sent to a different country. A U.S. court had even told the previous administration to help him get there, but he ended up in El Salvador. And complicating it further, an American judge apparently identified him as a member of MS-13, which is, designated a terrorist group.
Right. So what did Bukele actually say about sending him back?
He was pretty blunt, told reporters something like, "Of course I'm not going to do it. The question is preposterous. I don't have the authority." And he added he wouldn't release a terrorist into his country, pointing out their crackdown on crime.
Sounds like a bit of a standoff. What else did they discuss?
Well, it seems they spent quite a bit of time complimenting each other's policies on migration and crime.
Really?
Yeah, President Trump apparently told Bukele, "You are helping us out and we appreciate it." And President Trump also brought up his idea again about potentially sending some individuals who commit serious crimes in the U.S. to El Salvador.
That's a significant policy idea he's mentioned before.
It is. And the article notes they seem to share this kind of conservative, strongman style politics. Very direct leadership. They also apparently talked about criticizing the media, which isn't surprising, and the issue of transgender athletes in women's sports came up too.
So quite a bit of common ground found, it seems.
Definitely. And here's a really striking detail. Soon after President Trump's current term started, President Bukele apparently offered to take in people from the U.S. who were here unlawfully.
Offered to take them?
Yeah, in exchange for payment, like $6 million.
Wow. And did the president accept that?
According to the article, yes. It says over 250 individuals who entered without authorization have since been sent to El Salvador.
How? What's the mechanism?
They used a really old law, the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. It's usually for wartime, letting the president remove people from nations the U.S. is at odds with, kind of bypassing normal legal processes.
1798. That sounds unusual for this context.
Exactly. It was used way back, War of 1812, world wars, often targeting specific nationalities. Using it now is definitely drawing attention. The administration's stance is that these individuals are criminal gang members.
And what about Abrego Garcia, the guy deported by mistake? What's his status now?
He's in a terrible position. The Trump administration admitted the deportation was an administrative error, and a judge ordered them to help him get to the country he was meant to go to. But now the U.S. government says he's in Salvadoran custody, and President Bukele is refusing to send him back, calling him a terrorist. So he's stuck in this legal limbo.
Man, that's rough. And despite all this cooperation, didn't the U.S. just put tariffs on El Salvador?
You're right, they did. El Salvador was one of several countries hit with U.S. tariffs this month. But the U.S. is still their biggest export market by far, so the economic ties are still huge.
Interesting dynamic. Was there anything else?
Just a quick note, they apparently both like cryptocurrency. El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender back in 2021, remember?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so rating time for this one. What's your take? Unbearable, neutral, or bearable?
I have to go with Unbearable. Using that old wartime act for removals and the whole situation with Abrego Garcia, it feels very concerning. What about you?
I'm leaning towards neutral on this one. I mean, the legal stuff in the act are definitely questionable, but the focus on cracking down on gangs,
Yeah.
a lot of people support that. It feels really complicated, lots of angles.
Fair enough. Okay, let's move over to social media news. You're taking the lead here, right?
Yep, got it. All right, this is about a major legal fight happening right now. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is taking Meta, Facebook's parent company, to court.
And this is about the Instagram and WhatsApp deals, right, from years ago?
Exactly. The core of the FTC's argument is that Meta bought Instagram and WhatsApp specifically to eliminate them as rivals instead of competing fairly.
So buying out the competition.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The FTC lawyer basically said this is an illegal strategy, creating barriers for others and limiting choices for users. They're calling it an unlawful monopoly. It's an antitrust case trying to stop one company getting too much power.
And what does the FTC want to happen? What's the end goal?
They want something huge for the court to force Meta to sell off both Instagram and WhatsApp.
Sell them. Wow, that would completely reshape Meta.
Absolutely. It's a massive threat to the company.
Mm.
And interestingly, this case actually started during President Trump's first term.
Oh, right. So it's kind of a test for the current administration's stance on big tech.
Seems that way. And it's worth noting, Meta has apparently been trying to build bridges with President Trump since his return to office.
How so?
Well, reports say they've relaxed some content rules that conservatives criticized. They apparently gave $1 million to his inauguration events. And Zuckerberg has visited the White House a few times recently.
Trying to smooth things over, perhaps. But the FTC is pressing ahead regardless.
Totally. An FTC rep said they're more than ready for this trial. Meanwhile, Meta's lawyer is arguing the FTC isn't looking at how social media works today.
Like with TikTok.
Exactly. They're pointing at TikTok, the shift to short video, saying the whole landscape is different now compared to when they bought Instagram and WhatsApp.
What about those old emails from Zuckerberg? Weren't they pretty explicit about buying competitors?
Yeah, that's expected to be key evidence. Zuckerberg is likely testifying about emails, where he talked about buying Instagram to neutralize a competitor, and worried WhatsApp could become a rival network.
So the FTC will use those to show intent.
Right. But Meta's argument is basically that was then, this is now. They're saying the market is competitive today with TikTok, YouTube, even Apple's iMessage, and that the acquisitions actually helped users.
So it boils down to how you define the market and who competes with whom.
Pretty much. How people spend their time online, what services they see as interchangeable. That's central. The FTC is arguing Meta has a monopoly specifically in personal social networking, sharing with close friends and family.
Not like TikTok or YouTube where it's broader.
Exactly. They say in that specific market, Meta's main U.S. rivals are just Snapchat and maybe this smaller privacy app, MeWe.
And didn't the judge seem a bit skeptical early on?
Yeah, Judge Boasberg apparently said the FTC faced some hard questions on proving their case. The trial could go for months. And even if the FTC wins this round,
There's another trial.
yeah, a second one to figure out if forcing Meta to sell would actually restore competition. It's a long road.
Losing Instagram alone sounds like it would crush Meta financially.
Oh, it'd be huge. No official numbers, but estimates suggest Instagram brings in maybe half of Meta's U.S. ad money, and it makes more money per user than Facebook does.
Wow. What about WhatsApp? Is it making money yet?
Less so right now, much smaller revenue contribution. But it has this enormous user base, billions of people, and Meta's pushing hard to monetize it with business tools and stuff. Zuckerberg sees it as a huge growth area.
And this whole case is part of that bigger push against big tech that started under President Trump's first term.
Yeah, Amazon, Apple, Google, they're all facing similar antitrust suits. It's interesting how some tech companies maybe shifted their tone towards the Trump administration after he returned, but these cases are still moving forward.
Okay, complex stuff. Rating time for the Meta trial.
It's going to say neutral. It's a major legal battle. The outcome's uncertain. Breaking them up could be good for competition, or it could cause chaos. Hard to say if it's ultimately good or bad right now. What's your rating?
I'm leaning Unbearable. Just the potential disruption, the uncertainty for users and the company. It feels negative, at least while it's playing out.
Fair point. Okay, let's switch gears completely. Entertainment news. Your turn.
All right, so this is about Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' space company. They had a successful launch of their new Shepard rocket recently.
Oh, yeah. What was special about this one?
The crew. It was the first all-female crew to go to space since way back in 1963.
Wow, really? Since 1963? That's a long time. Who was on board?
Some pretty big names, actually. Katy Perry, the singer.
Katy Perry went to space.
Yep. Also, Gayle King from CBS Mornings, film producer Carrie Ann Flynn, Lauren Sanchez Bezos' fiancée, civil rights advocate Amanda Noindinian, and an aerospace engineer named Aisha Bowe.
That's quite a crew list.
Yeah.
Impressive. And this was another flight for New Shepard.
Yeah, the article said it was the rocket's 31st flight overall and the 11th one with people on board. They're really trying to build up this space tourism thing, competing with SpaceX, you know?
Right, the billionaire space race. But hasn't Blue Origin gotten some flack for being, like, super exclusive?
Yeah, that criticism definitely exists, that it's kind of a playground for the super rich, especially when there are so many problems down here on Earth.
Makes sense. I bet a ticket costs a fortune.
You'd bet right, around $150,000 for a seat, according to the article.
Oh, yeah.
But Katy Perry apparently framed it differently. She talked about how the trip was really about seeing Earth's beauty and understanding why we need to protect it.
That's a nice perspective, I guess. Are they doing more launches soon?
Yep. They announced they're prepping for a second launch of their bigger rocket, New Glenn, sometime this spring, so things are moving forward for them.
Okay. Rating for the all-female space crew.
I'm going with Bearable. Seeing progress in space is cool, and highlighting an all-female crew after such a long gap feels like a definite positive. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll go Bearable, too. Access issues aside, the milestone itself, that all-female crew, is worth acknowledging. Good step. All right, let's talk fashion news. Your turn again.
Okay. This is about fast retailing. They're the Japanese company that owns Uniqlo GU Theory.
Ah, Uniqlo. Love their stuff. How are they doing?
Pretty darn well, it sounds like. They actually raised their profit forecast for the whole year after a really strong first half.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they might be heading for their third straight year of record profits.
Wow. What do the numbers look like?
For the first 6 months ending in February, total revenue was up 12%. That's about $12.5 billion US. Operating profit jumped over 18% to $2.13 billion. Net profit was up nicely, too.
Those are solid numbers. Is it mostly Uniqlo driving that?
Definitely seems like it. Uniqlo is doing well both in Japan and internationally. In Japan, revenue up almost 12%, operating profit up over 26%.
What's working for them there?
They said good product development, smart marketing that reacted to weather changes, and also more sales to tourists visiting Japan. Makes sense. Uniqlo's huge for tourists. How about outside Japan?
Also strong growth. Uniqlo International saw revenue climb nearly 15%, operating profit up almost 12%. Southeast Asia, India, Australia, North America, Europe, all doing well.
So success pretty much everywhere. Any weak spots?
Yeah, Greater China was tougher. Mainland China saw a revenue dip about 4%,
Yeah.
and profit drop 11%. They blamed weaker consumer spending and not having the right product mix. Hong Kong was down too, but Taiwan actually grew.
Okay, so China's a bit challenging. What about their other brands, like GU?
GU's revenue edged up slightly, but their operating profit actually fell. They mentioned not having any big hit products, higher rent from a new U.S. store, and more ad spending.
And Theory and the others.
That whole segment, Global Brands Theory, PLST, Comptoir Cotonnier, is still their weakest link. Revenue slipped a tiny bit. But on the plus side, they actually made an operating profit this time, whereas last year they had a loss. So an improvement to still lagging.
Got it. So mostly good news driven by Uniqlo, but some mixed results elsewhere. Rating time.
I'm going Bearable. Strong results for a major global retailer, especially Uniqlo, feels positive overall for that sector.
Yeah, I agree. Bearable. Seems like consumers are still spending in many places. Okay, final topic. AI and tech news. You're up. All right, bringing it home. This one's about Meta. Again, Facebook, Instagram, and their plans for training their AI models in the European Union.
Oh, yeah, using user data, right? I thought they paused that in the EU.
They did. They're planning to start using public content from EU users to train their AI. This comes after that pause, which is all about data privacy concerns, especially around GDPR.
Right, GDPR makes things tricky over there. So why are they moving forward now?
Well, they've been using US user content for AI training for ages. The EU was resistant because of those strict privacy laws. GDPR basically says you need a clear legal reason to use personal data for stuff like AI training.
So what changed since they paused last year?
Good question. Back in June last year, they hit pause in the EU and UK after the Irish Data Protection Commission, their main EU regulator, raised concerns. Then, in September, they started up again in the UK. Now they're saying they'll do the same with public posts from EU users.
What's their official reason now?
Meta says they waited while regulators kind of figured out the rules, and they reckon their original plan actually met the requirements anyway. They mentioned talking with the Irish DPC and wanting to bring generative AI benefits to Europe.
How are they telling people in the EU this is happening?
Starting this week, apparently. Users will get notifications in the app's emails too, explaining that public data and interactions with Meta AI will be used for training.
Is there an opt-out?
Yes, crucial point. The notifications will link to a form where users can object, can say, don't use my data. Meta says they'll honor all existing opt-outs and any new ones.
Any data they won't use?
Yeah, they specified. No private messages and no public data from anyone under 18 in the EU will be used for training.
Okay, so why is getting this EU data so important for their AI?
Their argument is they need to build AI for Europeans, not just available to them. They say the models need training on diverse data to understand European languages, local context, cultural nuances, even like humor and sarcasm.
Makes sense. You want the AI to understand the local flavor. Are other companies doing this?
Meta points out that, yeah, Google and OpenAI have already used European user data for training, so they're basically saying, we're just doing what others are doing.
But it sounds like the regulators are still watching this closely.
Absolutely. The Irish DPC is still looking into how AI models are trained in general. They even recently started investigating the XAI's Grok model, so it's definitely still a hot topic over there.
Okay, interesting developments. Final rating for the EU AI training story.
I think I'm going neutral. I get why they need the data for better AI, but the privacy concerns in the EU are real and important. Feels like a tricky balance. What's your take?
I'm also landing on neutral. It's progress for AI, potentially, making it more relevant globally, but you can't ignore the privacy side, especially with GDPR. It's complicated.
Agreed. Well, that wraps up our very first installment of Unbearable.
Yeah, we definitely covered some ground today, from Dolly Parton potentially getting an airport,
Which we both loved.
to complex international relations, the big Meta lawsuit, space tourism milestones, fashion financials, and, of course, the ever-evolving world of AI and privacy.
It really shows the range of things shaping our world right now. Lots to process.
For sure. And on that note, we wanted to leave you, our listeners, with a final thought to chew on.
Considering everything we talked about today, all these different stories, what single development do you think might have the most significant impact, say, in the near future, and why?
Something to mull over. Thanks so much for joining us for this first run of Unbearable.
Yes, thank you. We'll be back soon with more stories and our takes. Until then.
Take care, everyone.